John Green. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska on August 24th, 1928. My father's name was Morris Green. He was born in Russia, in Minsk, which is the capital of Minsk Gubernia, around 1880 or 81.
You're doing great.
My mother was born in Kapulya, which is a small city several miles from Minsk in Russia. Its name now I think is Kapol, and she was born in about 1988. I'm sorry. 1888. The immigration, my mother's family were separated and scattered because her mother died about 3 days before they were supposed to leave. And my mother came to Boston, where there was some family, and she worked in a hat factory or something like that for about a year, and then came on to Omaha because most of the people that came to the United States at that time ended up in Omaha, probably because that's where the railroad stopped. Regardless, there was a large contingent from Kapulya, and many of the people that were in Omaha helped others to come. My Aunt Ruth came in to Galveston, but because she was left there with my mother when she was sick after my mother died, her passport was no longer good, and she came in under the name of Shafton, which is a well-known name in Omaha.
Was she related to Ed Shafton?
Technically, I don't think so, but she came in under that name. The Shaftons were, it was like all one big family. I've got some pieces of paper with a lot of cross names and things like that. You know, we were all one big family in Omaha.
Was your name shortened?
No. My father's older brother, my Uncle Aaron, whom I didn't know anything about for years, was drafted into the Cossacks. And after 3 years, he came back home, and he re-enlisted, and the next brother was allowed to leave the country. And he went to Pittsburgh. He kept on doing that until all the boys were allowed to leave, and my father came over. He was about a year old. But when my Uncle Aaron had signed for him, he was able to leave. And then Uncle Aaron came to Philadelphia. The name, I guess, at Ellis Island they would ask, you know, well, what is your name? And people would say, well, he's a Greener, you know, and would end up with the name Green or Ferguson. And a lot of, like Abramson, because he's the son of Abraham, they didn't know last names really at that time. You know, my name would have been David Yitzhak Ber of Moshe. For my father's name was Morris, etc., etc. And as a matter of fact, when I was called up on my bar mitzvah, that was the name that they used. The family came to, my father was very young, and he came to a sister in Council Bluffs, Iowa. And then my mother met him or something like that several years later, and they got married. My oldest brother was born about 1906, and the next one is 1908. And I don't remember what year my sister was born. I was born in 28 and she was 13 years older than I am, so.
Can you give us their first names?
Oh, my oldest brother's name was Norman Green, Simon Green, my sister Evelyn, and me. My young years, I remember just very small things, like I must have been maybe one or two, because I rode around on my grandfather's wheelchair, and which is about all I remember of him, that I rode on his wheelchair. I was told that some of those people, well, one of them owned a piece of land out on Dodge Street, someplace in the 1800s, where he used to train circus horses. That piece of land, long before I was ever around, was sold back to the city for taxes, things like that. But it was sometimes amazing to hear what some of these people did to make a living. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. I was going to stop you, but so I could reorganize my thoughts.
Okay.
Okay. Well, in terms of youthful remembrances, I remember things like F&F Cough Drops was home based in Omaha, Nebraska, and my brother worked there, and my sister ended up working there, and probably everybody that my brother and sister knew worked for F&F Cough Drops until they moved to Chicago, and then
Mr. Frager and Mr. Fox.
Frager and Fox, right? And then they were gone. I was ring bearer for their weddings, my Aunt Ruth's wedding, and Dr. Good grief. Dr. Reutzstein and his wife. I think I was like a professional ring bearer there when I was 4 years old for 5 or 6 times. I went to Lake School, and when I graduated from Lake School, my last year at Lake School, I got my first real job that I got paid money for, 12 cents an hour at the Central Market on 16th and Harney.
Before you leave Lake School, do you remember some of your classmates, some of your Jewish classmates?
I don't think I paid that much attention in terms of whether they were Jewish or not, but we're on the way to school, for example. I'd walk up 19th Street, and going up 19th Street, there were the Gendler family lived a block away. Next door were the Bernsteins, over another one, Handler, and as you moved up on the other side of the street, the Froome family lived. Going up a little farther, the Gusses were there. There were a lot of Jewish people around that area at that time.
When I asked you, did the Froomes have twins?
I don't know. I don't know what children they had. My acquaintances with them were with the father, who was an old man, and I was very young, but sometimes when I was a kid, we would go out with a case of strawberries and go house to house to sell strawberries and things like that.
And was the Gus family, was that Joe Gus?
That was that family. I think that their parents, though.
Yeah.
On 20th Street, the Fishers lived on 20th and Grace. The Fishers, when they first came over to Omaha, lived with my parents in their, literally in their apartment for some time. I have to laugh at that because one of those Fisher girls married somebody, a guy named Kern, and lived in Brooklyn. In 1949, when I was in my first year of medical school at Christmas vacation, my father wanted to go to Philadelphia to see his brother, his older brother. And we took the train to Pittsburgh, stopped, spent a night with my Uncle Oscar in Philadelphia, and then moved on to, in Pittsburgh, and then we moved on to Philadelphia and spent several days there. Again, my Uncle Aaron refused to speak English. He spoke 9 or 10 different languages. And the radio was on all the time, and he would go from one language to the other for the news broadcasts and things like that. And he looked exactly like my father. They looked like twins until he took off his hat. He had a full head of gray hair, and my father had typhoid and was bald. But he got rid of me one day. He said, you know, I want you to do me a favor. Go down on the corner there, you'll see a little picket fence across the street, about 20 yards up. There's a little doorway, gateway. Go in, knock on the door, and tell them that Aaron sent them, and they're going to give you something for me. And so I walked down there and knocked on the door. This guy comes and he says, "New," and kind of stuck with me. And I said, "My Uncle Aaron sent me down here." He said, "Aaron Green?" "Yeah." He grabs me and pulls me in. It was a little shul that, you know, the neighbor had. It was a little shul, and they gave me an aliyah for my uncle.
That's nice.
We were there for like 3 days, and I had insisted if I was going to go, then I wanted to go to New York, because I never expected I'd ever go to New York. And we got off on Friday afternoon of the train, and right across the street from the Grand Central Station was a hotel. I don't have any idea what the name was. And we took a room, and we went down, and we had a Shabbos meal, and then we went to, I think it was 2nd Street or something like that, to see a Molly Pecan stage presentation.
What year are we talking now?
We're talking 1949. And I'm sorry, yeah, 1949. And I got home, we went back to the hotel, and I said, you know, Dad, I think that there was an invitation to a bar mitzvah in Brooklyn tomorrow morning. So we called home. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning at home, and my mom answered the phone, and she got the invitation. I took the name and address and all that, and we got up early and started with all the subways and buses, and there must be 1,000 shuls in Brooklyn. But we finally got it. We got there just as the services were starting, and we sat down in the last row until we were discovered. And then they made us come up and sit with them in the front row. And afterwards, we went to their usual shalashus, and then afterwards, they had the whole afternoon party. But we had to leave at 2, so we would be able to get back on. We had our reservations were pulling us out that night. The interesting thing about this is that in the office next to me, there is a optometrist, and he was talking on the phone when I walked into his office, and he says, "Hey, wait a minute. I have somebody here from Omaha. Maybe you know each other." And he puts him on the phone, and the name was Kern, and I didn't think I knew him. And then all of a sudden, I asked him, I said, "Are you," and I named a number, "years old?" And he says, "Yes." "How do you know that?" And I asked him several questions. He was the kid that was bar mitzvah that day in Brooklyn. And of course, I'd never seen him since. And since that time, he has moved back to Omaha, Apparently, he's very successful because he gave a lot of optometric equipment to Pierce College. You know, several $100,000 worth of equipment. And, but that was just kind of an outside happening, and he's probably still back there.
Let me ask you, since you were talking about somebody's bar mitzvah, what do you remember about your own bar mitzvah?
Well, I remember preceding that bar mitzvah, I used to have lessons from school would end at 3:30. I had to be home because Mr. Rifkin was going to be there.
Now, this was no longer Lake School, right?
This
You
is
moved,
no, this is Lake School, after Lake,
still Lake, okay.
after Lake School, and he would be there, and was teaching me Hebrew. When I was bar mitzvah, I could write in Yiddish, and I didn't speak it too well, but I could speak Yiddish, and I could read the newspapers and things like that, forward. And but anyway, then after my bar mitzvah was at the Kapuya Shul, which at that time was on 24th and Nicholas, and I conducted the services, Shachinah, etc. And it all went very well, I thought. The second half, my Uncle Max from Sioux City just had to get in and be the chazan for that half, but that was okay too.
Do you know if you still have your bar mitzvah certificate?
I never got a certificate. That was pre times of that sort of stuff, but I still have the little siddur that I got. Things like that. Something would be hard to find right now because I've got boxes I haven't unpacked in the garage. Then I started high school, and I got into the Talmud Torah at the Jewish Community Center. I was right across from high school, and I did that until, I don't know, maybe till I must have been 15, 16 years old. The Jewish children in Omaha had a real benefit because of the JCC. 98% of the Jews in the city went to Central High School. And when school ended, they would go in droves right across the street to the center. And they had a lot of youth clubs, lots of activity all the time, lots of inter-club competition. Okay, this is a picture of Central High School that was in the Jewish press back in September '99. The school still looks similar to the way it was when I was there, although there have been many changes. But as I say, the advantage was is you could walk down those steps, and you walk a quarter of a block, and you were at the JCC, and there were all kinds of activities at the J. And comparing that to today, I would have to say that I think having that mix like that prevented a lot of assimilation. Some occurred, but I see the younger kids marry out of the faith quite often. Didn't happen that much back then. And one of them was because of the J being there. After I graduated from Central,
Before you move on, do you remember any clubs you were in at Central?
I was in AZA #1, Mother Chapter,
Okay.
and At that time, there were two, Mother Chapter number 1 and AZA 100, Century Chapter. These are words that I haven't used in this matter for years.
How about high school clubs at Central?
Oh, I was really not in many high school clubs. Everybody was in the ROTC. I was in the chess club, the math club, things like that. But, that would be a once-a-month thing. In AZA, we had our own programs going. We had debates all the time with other AZA groups and things like that. Albert Feldman, who is an attorney in Omaha, was in the class. My mind isn't quick enough anymore to come up with a lot of names, but okay. It's really difficult to come up with a name. Maury Abramson was in my class. Maury lives in Moore Park, California now, and Jack Katz was there. A tall guy who played basketball. I'm just terrible on names. And some of these things will come back to me, in 10 minutes.
Was that Belgrade?
No. I don't remember. I remember some names and things like that. Like, for example, Reustein. Eisenberg and Reustein's father opened up a potato business down on the market. I think that the Eisenberg that I see in the paper is probably the son. It's either the son or grandson of that person. And I think he married a gal named Nierenberg, who was at camp as a counselor. She taught dancing. As I say, Herbie Denenberg also was an attorney, but he does economics and has a big name back east in Pennsylvania. Ed Zirinsky was in my class. He was governor, but not governor, he was senator, and he died.
Can you tell us a little bit about your family business, your family's business?
Well, I grew up in the grocery business, basically. My father had a little grocery store when I was 5 years old. It was right across the street from Lake School, so when the school was over, I would go into the store. It was sold. My brother Simon and my father opened something on 16th Street, right across from the potato market. It's called the Apple Store. They were there for a few years, and then we worked down on the market, on the city market. And when I get on my bicycle and go down and help out. The interesting thing was, when I was in medical school, my father had his first stroke. And they told him that he'll never walk again. And for about 4 months, that was going to be true. And then by accident, I said to him, I would like you to start working, because he really wouldn't even exercise or try to do exercises. He was just depressed. And if you can get from the back door of the house to where I keep the car in the backyard, which was flat, except for one big step down, but there was a pole. If you can get from there to the car without help, when school ends, I will get up at 2:30 in the morning and take you to the market so you can see all your old cronies. And he got interested in doing things, and by June he was able to get there. And I would take him down, and he would meet all his old friends and some of the farmers that came in that knew him. You see, and all of a sudden, a bunch of stuff was left on our tables. The tables were still there. They were just all tied together, not being used. So I took him home, and I had to go back and sell it to get rid of it. And then as he went around, he would start buying things again. And I would take him home and have to get rid of it. And he just stayed longer and longer. By the end of the summer, he was there full time, working.
So you sold to people who came down to the old market, the city market. You were not in the wholesale business.
No, we're not in the wholesale business. Yes. For example, Herman Culley used to come all the time on the way to St. Joe Hospital. There were a lot of people that would come by. People I didn't even know. For example, when my father died, and we were at the Chesed Shalemus on Cumming Street, the funeral home there, just getting ready to get started, and the door opens and in walked Father Lynch and what was his name? Father later both of them became president of the university at different times.
Was it Father Reinhardt?
Yeah. Came in to attend the services. Now, I didn't even know yet that my father knew that. But just a lot of, they were all around Omaha for a long time.
Did your mother work in the business?
Yeah. Sometimes she would come down to help out. But when they didn't see eye to eye, my father said, okay, you can go home now. Because she was always worried that if the things didn't sell, we would be there all night. Sometimes she was right, but most of the time, the price would drop as the day progressed because there was no refrigeration. But basically, that's what I did. And my brother got another grocery store on 25th and Capitol Avenue. And sometimes I'd go up and help out. But when I was a kid, we always had to put 10 pounds of potatoes in a bag and sack them up and stock shelves and cancel eggs and things like that.
What do you remember about your mother? Good cook? What were her hobbies?
My mother was an excellent cook. Her hobbies, I think, were people. This year for Passover, my niece's son had a Passover where everybody was remembering my mother, because anybody that went from the East Coast to the West Coast went through Omaha, and they would stop and stay with us on the different holidays. The Kaplans, who at that time lived in Red Oak, Iowa, would come in. They would stay with us. The Greens, who lived in Norfolk, Nebraska at that time, would come in. We just had lots of people in the house all the time.
I want to ask you, the Kaplans, are those the same Kaplans that were in
Yes,
Missouri Valley,
Aunt
Iowa?
Ika and Uncle Jake. At that time, they had a store in Missouri Valley.
But eventually opened a store in Red Oak?
I'm sorry, at that time they had a store in Red Oak. Their daughter lived in Missouri Valley. The house was always full of people. My mother had a brother, Nathan Harry Miller, who went to law school and ended up in Oakland, California. And he had an associate, and the associate ran for governor and was elected. And then they had this practice he talked my Uncle Harry to give it up, so they sold it. And then he appointed him as one of the assistant district attorney. I'm sorry, he ran for district attorney. And so my uncle was an assistant district attorney. Then he ran for governor. Now, in 1944, he gave what I was told was a really impassioned plea for money for the UJA at the synagogue, walked off the podium and dropped dead. I often wondered what would have happened if that hadn't happened, because his friend and law partner was elected governor of the state of California, and later he ran for the presidency of the United States. And one night in late October, when I was in college at the time, but it gets cold in Omaha, as you're aware, about 7:30, the doorbell rings, and I go and answer the door, so I have to go from the living room into this little atrium-like, which was a large-sized closet space. There the front door was, and then open up the storm door, and this guy is standing there, and he says, "Is this Annie Green's home?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I would like to see her. My name," good grief, I'm going to forget the name. He said that his name was Earl Warren, and that his best friend was always talking about my mother, and he had told him if he ever was in Omaha, he would come and meet her. And he was there for a fundraising for the presidency, something or other, a dinner meeting, which after the dinner and the speeches, he absented himself and came to our house and sat down in our kitchen. My mother conjured up some, she had a special way of making a bereavement strudel, she called it, but it was a cookie with fruit in it. And we were sitting there drinking tea, and he and my mother were carrying on the conversation. I'll never forget it, but and then about 10:30, he said, "Well, I've got to go. I've got to pick up my train for the next stop."
And what year do you think that was that Earl Warren came to visit your mom?
He was running for president, and it was around 1951, I would guess. But the family all, everybody knew Mom. Mom helped everybody. She talked to everybody, and she listened to everybody. And,